No, I wasn't there.
How long do you think you were there?
An hour?
It didn't seem like hours.
Objection.
Assistant.
So, in that interview room, you were being taped, and it was audio, video recorded, wasn't it?
I don't recall.
And you spoke to an investigator when you were in the interview room?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the time in the room, you were alone and you were speaking on your phone?
Right.
Okay. And when you wrote out each statement, you took care to be as accurate as possible.
Correct.
And you had mentioned on your direct examination that it was real important to you to, as things were happening, you thought, I need to remember this.
Yes.
So, as you looked and saw that maroon car, could you see through the windows to the other side? You were looking through the passenger. How could you see the people you were seeing?
My office is a little bit of an incline from the street. So when you're coming off the street towards the back of the office, it's a little bit of a hill. So I'm actually looking a little bit down on the street.
So are you describing, just to be clear, you're seeing things over the car? You were not looking through?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And your direct testimony, you stated that the gun was pointed up in the air. Is that correct?
When I saw it, yes.
And at no point was that gun pointed directly at the gentleman on the ground, correct?
Not that I saw.
And if you did see that, you would have put that in your statement, right?
Right. I saw right after I heard the noise.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess if you were to do the statement now, you testified under oath that the gun was pointed in the air. So these both statements at the point it says with a gun in hand, it's correct to say and pointed in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And to add never pointed directly at the person on the ground, correct?
Not that I saw, no.
Okay, you didn't see that.
Mm-mm.
And you heard one pop.
Mm-hmm.
And you, before coming into this courtroom, we've never met, have we?
No.
And you spoke with the two prosecutors, Ms. Strong and Ms. Ellis, correct?
Yes.
And that was in their office in this building on the 8th floor
Yes.
about 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
And there wasn't anyone else present, was there?
No.
And in these two statements, I believe well, let me back up. On your direct testimony, you were referring to my client as Carlos Riley, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
But in these statements, you never mentioned the name of the person who had the gun in the air, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And didn't you receive that information from the prosecutors or the police?
No,
Who
sir.
he was?
No.
But on these statements in this warning, these two statements in the audio visual, if it was recorded in that statement, you never mentioned his name.
No, sir.
So as you were seeing this unfold, you noted the race of both people, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And they were both black males.
Yes.
And you, from where you were, and you said it was from where you're sitting to the back of the courtroom, it was that distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could not identify as knowing either one of these gentlemen?
No, I didn't know him by name at the time. I did know him by sight.
Okay. So I'm not asking who provided this, but someone, once you were given a picture or saw him, and you were able to know his name because you knew him by sight. Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. All right, if I may have a moment.
Yes.
Besides, in your statement, States Exhibit 11, you state the person was trying to pull the driver out of the car. Is that correct?
That's what I wrote, yes.
Okay. And so that's what you saw as someone pulling, one black male pulling another one out of the driver's seat, correct?
Yes, I at the time I believed he was pulling. I don't know if there was a pull or a push or who was pulling who.
Thank you. Your Honor, that would be our questions at this time.
Thank you. Additional questions on redirect?
Just one, Your Honor. Ms. Heights, when you saw one person pulling another out of the car, which of those two people actually got into the car and drove away?
After the struggle, Mr. Riley pulled out and the officer was laying on the ground.
Thank you. Those are all my questions, Your Honor.
One follow-up question.
Yes.
And the gun was pointed to the sky, wasn't it?
When I saw it, it was.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Any other questions?
No redirect from the state, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Your Honor, we ask that Ms. Brooke Heights be released from the subpoena.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You're certainly welcome to stay in silence. This is a public proceedings, but you're also free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please call your next witness. Call your next witness in your
Your Honor, the state calls Corporal Craig.
I didn't hear the name, I'm sorry.
The state calls Corporal Craig.
Thank you. Can you please tell me where on the witness list, what number, if you know?
You come up here to be sworn.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you shall now give the court in the case now being heard shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God? I do. Thank you.
please tell the court your full name?
Amanda Lang Craig
How are you employed?
with the Durham Police Department, corporal in the investigations unit in District 2.
What are your duties as corporal in the investigations unit?
I supervise 6 investigators in the daily activities of routine investigations.
Is that the position you held on December 18th of 2012?
It was not.
What was your position on that date?
I was an investigator in District 2 Criminal Investigations Division.
And what were your duties as an investigator?
To investigate rapes, robberies, assaults, break-ins, larcenies.
And were you working and on duty on December 18th of 2012?
I was.
What were you doing on that day?
That morning we had, it being so close to Christmas, we had planned to gather as a group for a breakfast. Unfortunately, when I got out to my car that morning, I had a flat tire, so I did not make breakfast. I got my flat tire changed and was on my way to the garage, and had just pulled into the garage when I heard the call come out. I got my vehicle taken care of as quickly as I could, and I responded to the scene.
When you say you pulled into the garage, which garage is that?
The Durham County Fleet Maintenance Garage, who services the Durham government vehicles.
And you said as you were pulling in, you got a call.
I heard the call come out on the radio.
And was this before you were getting the tire fixed or after?
I believe I had gotten the tire fixed and I was in the process of filling up my gas tank when the call came out.
What did you do after hearing the call?
I responded directly over to Forest Point Apartments.
Do you recall about what time that was?
Not right off. It took me from the time it got from the gas pumps on Club Boulevard to Forest Point Apartments, probably 10 minutes, I would say.
Describe the scene when you arrived at the Forest Point Apartments.
There was a lot of police activity. Crime scene tape had been set up around the area. Myself and other investigators had parked outside the crime scene tape. The forensics unit was there. Multiple investigators, multiple officers were on scene processing the scene.
When you got there, was Investigator Stewart on the scene?
No, he had already been transported.
What did you do upon arrival at that scene?
I made contact with the, I believe it was my supervisor, whoever was in charge of the scene, and asked them what they needed me to do, and they instructed me on what they would like me to do.
What were you instructed to do?
To go to the apartment complex office and speak with the apartment manager and the apartment manager assistant.
What are the names of those people?
They were Brooke Hypes, I believe it is, and Jessica McCurdy.
Did you speak with both of those ladies?
I made initial contact with both of them, but I only had a conversation with Brooke Hypes.
Describe Ms. Hype's demeanor when you saw her.
She was very emotional, very scared. I believe at that point in time she had realized what had actually occurred. She was scared for her life. She was scared.
Objection, motion to strike.
You sustained as to the last phrases of what Ms. Heights felt, and most to strike is allowed to disregard that last answer.
What did you do upon making initial contact with Ms. Hypes?
I separated the two witnesses and brought Ms. Hypes back into the back office area where she was seated when the incident occurred. I sat her down at the desk and began a conversation with her about what she had witnessed and what had occurred.
And were you able to see the area where she was seated when the incident occurred?
I was.
Describe that.
When you walk in the apartment, off her office, you walk directly in, and her desk is to the left. Immediately in front of you are the sliding glass doors that lead out of the back small patio of the office area. And then, of course, there was a seat in front of her desk where I sat.
Did you look out these sliding glass doors?
She got up from her desk to show me where she was standing and when she saw the incident, and so I got up with her and looked to see as she directed me to the parking lot.
And were you able to see the parking lot without obstruction?
I was.
What'd you do next?
She sat down with me and went over what she heard and what she saw and what she did.
Did Ms. Hipes prepare a written statement in your presence?
She did.
When Ms. Hipes went over what she heard and saw, what did she tell you?
She stated that she was in the apartment when she heard a loud pop. She thought the sound that she heard was a vehicle bottoming out because there are speed bumps in the apartment complex. So she got up and walked to the sliding glass doors to look. When she got to the doors, she saw a black male wearing a black vest and a black shirt, struggling over a gun with someone inside a red colored car. Brooke said that she saw the victim on the ground. She ran back toward the office, the front of the office, to tell her assistant to call 911. She looked out the front window of the apartment complex and saw the red vehicle backing up. At that point in time, the male that was in the red vehicle exited the vehicle and started walking back towards where she last saw the victim. At that point in time, she ran back to the sliding glass doors to see if the individual was going back to the victim. She did not see him. She went back up to the front, and at that point in time, she saw the vehicles backing up and taking off out towards Sedgefield Street, out of the apartment complex.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Questions of Ms. Craig, Mr. Chong?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach to take a look at what the witness has been reading from?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just two same copies of the same thing.
Resume my seat for a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, was aware of the importance of her statement. Made Ms. Hipes aware that this was important, the statement she was going to write out?
Are you asking if I specifically told her that it was important for her to write a statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And did it take her to write out the statement?
Approximately, I can't give you an exact time, 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes. I don't recall the exact amount of time it took from the time the witness statement formed to the time I collected it.
And could retrieve States Exhibit 11 and 12 and then approach the witness. States Exhibit 12, if you take a look at that and see, is that 12 the statement that Ms. Hikes wrote in your presence?
The first one is. The second one is not. State's Exhibit 12 is what she wrote and provided to me on the scene. State Exhibit 11 is not a statement that was provided to me.
And I take it you were not at headquarters when Ms. Hikes was at headquarters writing out 11?
I transported her to headquarters, but I was not in the room when she was interviewed by Detective West.
And in the interview room, there's audio visual capability to record, correct?
There is now, at that point in time, I can't speak to the status of the recording system.
Okay, thank you. Now, in State's Exhibit 12, Ms. Hikes did not mention anything about struggling over a gun within the car, does she?
She said pulling someone out of the car with a gun in their hand.
Okay. And that does not say they were struggling over a gun in the car, does it?
Pulling someone out of a car and struggling, in my mind, would be the same thing. If someone was willing to get out of the vehicle, they would get out of the vehicle as opposed to having to be pulled out of the vehicle.
So that's why you wrote what you wrote, because your understanding of what she was telling you is they were struggling over the gun in the car? Is that your testimony?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
Well, taking a look at State's Exhibit 12, nowhere does it say Ms. Hikes actually viewed a struggle over the gun in the car, does it?
No.
And you said she took 20 minutes to write this out in her own hand, correct?
Correct.
And it was a cold morning in December, 2.5 years ago, wasn't it?
I would assume so. It was December, so I would assume yes.
And that parking lot, as you come in to Forest Point, is on a slight incline, isn't it?
Slight grade, yes.
Are you familiar with the Durham Police Department General Orders on Radio Procedures 4014?
Could I quote them to you? No, but yes, I am familiar with the policy.
And for a traffic stop, police officers are required to call in their location and other information to Durham Emergency Communications, correct?
By policy, yes. By law, no.
By policy of the Durham Police Department 4014 Radio Procedures, the Durham police officers are required to call in to communications after a traffic stop. Isn't that right?
Without looking at the direct policy, I could not answer that question.
Would it be helpful to your testimony to see it?
Yes, if you'd like me to look over it.
Well, before I do that, let me ask you, so is there any question in your mind that you're required to call in to communications when you make a traffic stop?
Is there any question in my mind?
Yeah, isn't that the rule?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
One moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, if I may, in reference to the time frame that it took for Ms. Hikes to write the statement, if I may make an explanation as to the length of time as to why it took her that amount of time to write the statement.
You have the right to explain your answer. Yes, ma'am.
She is the apartment manager of that complex. So at that point in time when all of this was taking place, she was also dealing with issues of the apartment complex. The main one being when the police got there, they roped off the main entrance into the parking lot. There is an out exit in the back of the parking lot, but that is a gated exit. So she was back and forth with maintenance and other individuals attempting to get the back entrance open so that the residents could get in and out of the apartment complex, because the police department had that front complex closed. So while she was writing the statement, she was also dealing with her apartment manager duties at that point in time.
If I may have one moment.
Yes, sir.
That would be the defense questions at this time for the court. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step in.
Should I go to the state's exhibits?
Your Honor, at this time, the state would call Officer Minor to the stand.
Thank you. Are you asking that Corporal Craig be released from subpoena or not?
Yes, Your Honor.
I was going to ask if she could remain under subpoena but be released from the courtroom at this time.
That's, so the subpoena is still in effect, Ms. Craig, but you don't have to stay here in the courtroom.
Okay, so I understand I can go back to my station?
Yes. Now, thank you. Can I see counsel for this one? You stay right there, Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, it's time for our morning recess. You'll read there. It is 11:27 by the clock on my computer. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Remember the admonitions. I'll remind you of them again on this first major recess. Do not communicate with each other, or with anyone else about the case. Do not allow anyone to talk about the case in your presence. Do not talk to or have any contact with any parties. Attorneys or witnesses do not conduct any investigation or receive or attempt to receive any reports or information related to the case from any source, and do not form or express an opinion. And those other admonitions I gave you previously are usually. With that being said, we'll take a 15-minute recess. Everybody else just remain seated. We had a bench conference, but Officer Craig's still here, so I'll just tell Officer Craig directly. We're under sequestration order, not to talk about this case before you testify and that sort of thing. Because you are not yet released from subpoena and may or may not be called later, that's sequestration. that sequestration order still applies to you. So I just wanted to highlight that to you, not to discuss your testimony or discuss anyone else's testimony, anything of that nature, until you're released from the sequestration order.
Yes, sir, but I am free to leave the courthouse.
You are, and you are free to leave the courthouse, and you're sort of on standby, which you have done in your career, I'm sure, but not required to stay here. It's just, I'm just letting you know for the purposes of this effect of the subpoena, you're under subpoena. That may help us if you're called back and you're in a situation where I have to discuss it with another judge or whatever the case may be to get you back into the courtroom to testify. The effect of the subpoena is still back. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Anything else?
Briefly, just to confirm that the state is letting witnesses know the sequestration order so they don't talk about it based on what happened this morning. I don't want to continue to make mistrial motions based on what the prosecution isn't doing, so just this might be a good opportunity. We just hold that witness to make sure that these witnesses follow the order of the court. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. We'll just note that as record, on the record. Each party has an obligation to let its witnesses know of the sequestration order that applies equally to both sides. All right. We're in recess for 13 minutes.
Motion recess to 42.